Again, welcome to our training today. We're talking about celebrating staffing, innovation in school meals. So in this session, we are very lucky to hear from guest speaker Reese Lyerly. Sorry if I butchered your last name, Reese, but Reese is a Senior Director of Research and Evaluation with the Chef Anne Foundation. Reese will share on emerging trends in school meal staffing, as well as the research project Understanding the School Food Workforce. In addition, two of our inspiring grantees will present on their projects, highlighting innovative ways to introduce students to careers in school food systems. Also included today are networking opportunities for y'all to engage in open discussion, share best practices, and lessons learned to inspire and inform future collaborations. Please feel free to use the session guide that Jenna sent around via email to capture your learning. It's also included along with additional tools in the grantee training resources site, which we will reshare the link to in a couple of slides. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and pass it to our training and evaluation partner, Action for Healthy Kids.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everybody. My name is Jenna Kazmarski. I use she, her pronouns. I'm very excited to be back with you all for another training and networking session. I'm a nutrition program manager with Action for Healthy Kids, and we are the project partner for assessment, evaluation, training, and technical assistance. If we have anyone joining us for the first time in one of these trainings, just want to welcome you to the space, and let's go ahead and get started. So this is our agenda for today. We're working our way through the welcome. However, we will have some additional introductions as we hear from our guest speaker on school food workforce trends, as well as our two grantee highlights, which are focused on innovative ways to introduce students to careers in the school food system. And we'll have two opportunities for networking today. So by the end of our training session today, we hope you'll be able to summarize emerging best practices and staffing support for school meals and communicate key insights from grantee highlights to inform your own approach to successfully meeting your project goals. So you've now had several opportunities to see this graphic, and it's also in your session guide, but we like to reorient you and all of us to the long-term outcomes of the Innovation Hub. Many of you are entering year 2 of your projects, so it could be beneficial for you to review which other grant projects align with similar goals to your projects, especially as we're spending time in networking breakout groups. Hopefully you can connect with others and maybe consider reaching out to others, to learn from each other. And so I just want to remind you of this graphic. It's a great reminder of our long-term outcomes and how you all interact with those different outcomes in different projects. So we hope today's training will be engaging and interactive and certainly meeting our objectives. So we'll use a few different learning tools today, keeping it pretty basic. But as a reminder, we have the grantee resource page. This is where you can access everything related to our training today and all of our past trainings as a reminder. So the session guide is a way to capture what resonates for you, and you can reference the networking questions during your breakouts. We sent this in an email on Tuesday, but you can also download it from the resource webpage, and we'll go ahead and paste a link in the chat as well for easy access. If you want to pull that up, it's a great way to just take notes throughout the session and a reminder for you later as you're looking back through those, what we talked about and what you learned. And you can make notes during your breakout sessions with people you connect with as well. On the grantee resource page, we have several additional learning resources in case you want to dig a little bit deeper into the research that you'll hear Reese go over related to the school food workforce. Several great resources there for you. And lastly, we'll be using breakout rooms today for your networking sessions. So if you're able, please join us on camera, especially during the breakouts, so that you can better connect with each other. And just a reminder, if you have any technical issues, Esmeralda is available for you and can help you with anything that you might need. All right, so let's begin with a little warm up before we go into our content. So I'm going to launch a poll. I thought it would be fun. I know many of us on the call are partners to schools and school districts and those operating school meals. And I think based on registrations, we have just a few actual school meal operators. So I thought it would be fun to see if any of us have had actual experience working in a school kitchen. Since that's what we're talking about today, I think it would be great for us to find out what type of experience those of us on the call have. So you have a few different choices. Oh, good. There for a minute, I thought we were going to have nobody with very much experience, but I'm seeing some in there, so this is great. Just a minute more. Okay. Go ahead and share the results. So it does look like the majority have maybe helped out a little or not had any time in the kitchen, but we do have about 5 folks who have some experience in the kitchen. So I think that's great for our presenters today to kind of ground us in the fact that while we're working with, people working in the school kitchen and we're trying to help improve school meals, we need to really understand the conditions they work under, the stresses that they have, and what their experience is like. So I think this is going to be a great presentation for those of us that have not had as much experience in the kitchen. So, all right, close that out. And with that, I am very excited to welcome Reese Lyerly, the Senior Director of Research and Evaluation with the Chef Ann Foundation, to join us today as our guest speaker, and I'll pass it over to Reese.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenna and Catherine. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Reese. I am based in Providence, Rhode Island, and I use he, him pronouns. I didn't put this in the chat, but a bright spot of my week, or I'm hoping a bright spot of my week, is it's supposed to be 80 degrees and sunny tomorrow. So I'm hoping to squeeze in one more beach day in the Ocean State before we move into the fall. So I'm trying to squeeze out every ounce of summer that we can. But I'm excited to speak to you all today about celebrating staffing innovations in school meals. This will really be grounded in the work that we're doing on a USDA cooperative agreement known as the Understanding the School Food Workforce Study. So I'll get into that a little bit as well. So here's an overview of what to expect for the time that we have together. So I'm going to start with some background of what we currently know about the school food workforce. I'm going to talk through our lessons learned from a series of listening sessions that we conducted with a variety of stakeholders in summer of 2024, which resulted in some research questions and a re-granting of 4 projects and subgrantees for the Understanding the School Food Workforce project. So one thing I'll mention here is in many ways, I'm wearing my Chef Ann Foundation hat, but this is part of a larger project. As I mentioned, it's a cooperative agreement with USDA Food and Nutrition Service. It's led by the Dr. Jen Gaddis at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, as well as Dr. Beth Katz of the Food Insight Group. So this is definitely a representative presentation of the work of many, many folks beyond just myself. So you can see here our project team. I already introduced Dr. Gaddis and Dr. Katz. I also wanted to mention Alexia Kolwick, who's an associate professor at UW-Madison and brings a labor economics perspective, as well as Dr. Laura Dresser and Dr. Sarah Trungone, who also are collaborators of ours at UW-Madison. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start with a brief overview of what we currently know about the school food workforce in the United States. So we estimate that there are roughly about 339,000 public school food workers in the US, but this number has declined slightly over the past decade, although we see that this is not uniform across all of our states. In terms of the demographics of public school food workers, they are older on average than the overall workforce. So they are 52 years of age and aging, compared to about 28 in other food service industries. Public school food workers are almost entirely female, so 93% of school food workers are female, and they are more likely to be Black or Latino. So we're largely representing many minority communities. These jobs are often part-time when compared to other public school food staff and workers. And as we think about emerging trends, some of the things that are happening here with this group in the Innovation Hub, we see that there's expansion of things like scratch cooking and local procurement and value design practices. But these practices vary widely across the country, in part due to some of the limitations as we think about labor shortages and high turnover rates among our school food workforce. Next slide, please. So I wanted to mention briefly about school food wages. So one of the resources that Jenna mentioned that we shared with you is the Hungry for Good Jobs report that was released recently by the UC Berkeley Labor Center. What they found is that the median hourly wage for school food workers in the US is $12.78 an hour. This is in school year 23-24. And when we compare this to in terms of real terms, so how far can you stretch that dollar? These wages have declined slightly in real terms since 2008 to 2012. This hourly wage, in terms of comparison to other similar positions in the food service industry, is lower on average than other food service workers. When we compare it to other institutional cafeteria settings, such as hospitals or in higher education, you can see the difference in terms of hourly rates here. Hourly rates of $16 compared to $12.78. And when we think about it in comparison to other classified workers in the school setting, you can see that these wages are lower than on average. So you can see that this is, these jobs are part-time, seasonal, and in terms of their wages are lower on average than other competitive industries, both within the school environment as well as elsewhere. Next slide, please. So I wanted to mention this figure here, which came from a report that Dr. Gaddis published specifically about labor and school food workforce in our home state of Wisconsin. But I wanted to emphasize this because as we think about school food transformation, there's a lot of things happening that are really exciting in school food right now. As we think about strategies to increase student participation, to really drive scratch-made, fresh, whole school meals, as well as local purchasing incentives for schools and farms. We really want to think about this in terms of being a multifaceted approach. As we think about advocacy for universal free school meals, complementing that with workforce development and improved compensation for these workers, paired with local purchasing incentives to really be the grounded interdisciplinary approach to supporting the transformation that we're hoping to see in school meals. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we supported a series of listening sessions over the past last summer with a series of stakeholders that I'll define for y'all in the next slide. But here's a quote from the school nutrition director based in a large school district in the West, talking about this wage gap between those who work in school food service, which are predominantly female, as we discussed, compared to the averages of those who are in custodial roles, which are often male identifying individuals. So we see that this historical wage gap is really driven by disparities based upon gender. So as we think about the kind of evolution of school meal jobs, these were traditionally roles that were volunteer at first and really driven by the care economy. So as we think about those who are in this, one of the reasons we often see that there are wage disparities between roles like custodial versus food service, despite the fact that food service workers still are in charge of things like food safety. A lot of these disparities are driven by these historical trends and gender disparities. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned a few times now, in summer of 2024, we conducted a series of listening sessions or focus groups with the 5 groups that you see here. So we talked to frontline workers, professional development trainers, systems-focused organizations, school food operators, and policymakers. And our goal was really to understand, what do people currently know and understand about the school food workforce? And also, what questions do they have and what data do they need to really drive their work forward? We did a purposeful sampling approach. We wanted to make sure that we had a wide range of individuals and organizations represented, geographical representation, school district size, as much diversity as we could ensure in our listening sessions, and it had a total of 60 participate across these 5 groups. In the groups, we still had pretty large turnout, and so we divided them into Zoom breakout rooms with 2 to 5 participants, which really allowed us to dig deeper into specific questions about their work and had more robust discussions. So next slide. So I wanted to highlight for you all today some of the key learnings from these listening sessions, in particular, some of the drivers that we observed related to job satisfaction, both drivers of low satisfaction, as you see here, as well as high satisfaction, as I'll explore on the upcoming slides. So in terms of key drivers of low job satisfaction, we heard from both directors and frontline workers about how poor compensation and a lack of respect for their roles leads to lower job satisfaction, a lack of autonomy and lack of opportunities for professional development and training. And then lastly, workplace conditions contribute to job satisfaction, things like time, understaffing, and heat stress. So as you can see in this quote here on the right from a school nutrition director in the Northeast, a small district in the Northeast, they're talking about how minimum wage of fast food workers is set by the state and is substantially higher than what they're able to offer in their district. And this also makes it more challenging for them to recruit for their roles, given that they also have limited hours. So oftentimes we see that school food positions are part-time. They don't typically have nights, weekends, or holidays. For some individuals, that may be great in terms of their ability to do other unpaid caregiving, as you'll see on the next slide, but also maybe limiting in their ability to be competitive with other industries. So next, I want to talk a little bit about some of the drivers that we saw of higher job satisfaction. So what we heard is that fair compensation, higher compensation and benefits is a driver of higher job satisfaction. School food professionals are looking to have a voice in decision making. And as I mentioned a second ago, sometimes these part-time hours may be well aligned for those who have other unpaid caregiving responsibilities. We also heard a lot of discussion around how the connection to the school and the community and the mission of feeding children is often one of the drivers of higher satisfaction in their roles. And when they saw clear pathways for advancement and skills development, it helped contribute to greater satisfaction in their jobs as well. So here's a quote from a frontline worker. One thing that stands out to me is we often personify the school food industry through the image of a lunch lady. But this individual is talking about how, no, this is my income. This is my career. This is what I want my family on and have been. I just want that narrative. So really thinking about professionalizing this workforce, uplifting the skills that are required to do school food jobs, really, kind of thinking about how the pros and the cons of the personification of a lunch lady. And when we can think about professionalizing this, it can contribute to higher job satisfaction as well. So next slide. So here's a quote from a school nutrition director in a small district in the Mid-Atlantic, talking about how oftentimes we heard from districts about how they would like to pay their school food workers higher, but there's a complex set of state, local, national legislation that sometimes makes it challenging for them to increase the compensation rates that they would like to have. Even so, these often low wage and part-time workers have some of the highest touch in terms of their interactions with students in the district, as well as parents, teachers, administrators, and others. Many people intersect daily in the cafeteria setting, which gives them a high touch role. One of the things that we heard, as you can kind of see highlighted here, is that oftentimes they get the best and the worst of it all. And if we can really center these workers and the role that they have, not just for putting food onto plates, but also the social connectedness and other supports that they provide should be recognized accordingly. So next slide. So we also explored the impacts of scratch cooking and values-aligned procurement on school food labor. And what we heard is that when districts are making the transition to more fresh preparation and values-aligned procurement, this can lead to higher quality jobs and impact things like retention and job satisfaction, even though doing so may impact their overall workload and the needs for training and professional development. We also heard about how scratch cooking and values-aligned procurement can support increases in student participation, which have positive benefits. They can drive and support local and regional food systems, as well as generate community buy-in. One of the things I highlight here is there is at times some of this tension between moving towards a more scratch-cooked environment and the workload of our workers. There are a lot of research highlighting how there are many vacancy rates in school food jobs. One estimate of our work in California found that around 15 to 20% of school food roles were currently vacant, and we know that there's a high rate of turnover in these roles as well. So as we think about making this transition, we also want to consider the impact that it has on the workers in these kitchens, And as one elected union leader highlighted here, when you go into these kitchens, workers are completely burnt out by having to do so much work. So we want to think about our investment in the training that we provide as we support districts with their transition to the goals we're working towards. So next slide. So we translated these listening sessions into 3 primary research questions that resulted in the subgrants awardees that I'm going to talk about coming up. So what we really wanted to learn more about is what is the current state of the school food workforce and the structure of their jobs. Despite what I've highlighted today, there's a lack of understanding about the diverse characteristics of the school food workforce and how their jobs are organized. We're also interested in learning how, if at all, recruitment, job satisfaction, and retention are impacted by both the school and school food authority characteristics and their employment structures, as well as some promising strategies for creating a stable and respected school food workforce. So one of the things I want to highlight here is, again, this is a USDA cooperative agreement. The language of a stable and respected school food workforce came from the original RFP from USDA. And we're really excited to kind of dig into that concept in particular as we think about continuing to uplift the workforce. So we translated these research questions into a request for proposals. We had a total of $800,000 of available funding that we were able to re-grant. We received a total of 24 qualified applicants that went through 2 rounds of peer review, and we made recommendations to USDA that were reviewed and ultimately approved by the team at FNS. So next slide. So one thing I want to highlight here that I found to be really interesting about this RFP is that we requested that all applicants take a worker-centered approach to their research. And so what you can see here, the 8 qualities of worker-centered research from the Good Jobs Collaborative. But what I want to uplift is that we really encourage the research applicants to uplift the voices of frontline workers and the research questions that they asked, the data that they collected, and the dissemination strategies of their results. So what you'll see in the 4 grantees that we selected is that many of them chose to take a mixed methods approach, so incorporating qualitative methodologies like storytelling and focus groups to complement the quantitative data that's being collected on the school food workforce. And they also took a very participatory approach in terms of doing things such as creating community advisory boards or getting insights from frontline workers about the survey questions and methodologies as part of this work. So I'm going to briefly highlight for y'all the 4 awardees. So a little bit about timing. So we awarded these 4 sub-grantees this spring. Their work kicked off in June of this year, and it's an 18-month project period. So our goal is that by the end of 2026, we will have a lot more data to share publicly about our understanding of the school food workforce. I'm going to mention briefly just a very quick overview of each of these, but just so you know about the work that is happening is our first project is Dr. Hannah Lane at Duke University, and she's conducting a nationally representative survey of school level workers and conducting focus groups with 75 of those who complete the survey in partnership with the University of Illinois Chicago and the School Nutrition Association. They're really getting at that first research question of how can we get better perspectives and greater understanding of the current state of the school food workforce in the U.S. In complement to that, Dr. Bonnie Solomon at Child Trends is also working with this national survey, in addition doing a national survey of directors, really looking at what are the structural factors that lead to turnover among the school food workforce. We know, again, as I mentioned previously, there's high rates of turnover, high rates of vacancy in these positions, and starting to understand what are the factors that lead to this and how can we kind of work towards effective strategies to reduce the vacancy rates that we're observing nationally. So in terms of the next 2 awardees, Dr. Nevin Cohen at the City University of New York is doing a qualitative study of school food labor practices in 2 of the largest school districts in the US, being Los Angeles Unified School District and New York City Public Schools. They will be doing surveys in English, Spanish, and Chinese, as well as in-depth interviews with both workers and unions, really exploring what practices can lead to higher dignity for school food workers in some of the largest school districts in the country. And then lastly, Dr. Eunice Hahn at University of Utah is doing secondary analysis of multiple national data sets to explore what are the determinants of well-being among the school food workforce in the labor market. And I'm really excited for this one because she's also exploring factors that lead to positive returns on investment. So as we invest in higher wages for school food workers, how does that lead to other co-benefits in the school environment that promote well-being, not just for the workers themselves, but also positive return on investment for these communities. So I'll just mention too that all these, we're really trying to build a cohort of researchers doing more work around school food labor, and are really excited to share in a variety of mechanisms the findings and lessons learned from this. So as it moves forward, this will result in public dashboards, storytelling maps, public reports, conferences, presentations, manuscripts, and more. So our goal is to really contribute to a greater knowledge and address some of the gaps in knowledge that we currently have. So I am towards the end of my presentation, but I'm happy at this time. I saw a question come into the chat that I can digest now and respond to. But with the time that we have available before you go into your breakout rooms, I'm happy to address any questions or respond to any thoughts or ideas that you may have from this presentation. But thank you all for your time and listening today.
Reese, thank you so much. So much great information. We do have time. Let's see if you wanted to address the question that was posed early on.
Yeah. So I see Kim put a question in, does the wage take into consideration pension or healthcare benefits? So I would say that I need to look back at the UC Berkeley study to see if that is incorporating their benefit package. But what I can tell you is that we did conduct a wage equity study specifically in the state of California that did factor in things like benefits into our calculations as well. And what we saw is that because these roles are often part-time, there's kind of variability in terms of whether or not they qualify for benefits in the district. It kind of varies based upon the setting or locale within which they're working. But also, even when we factored in benefits to the package, once you annualized it over a 12-month period rather than a 9-month period, and then factored in factors and made comparisons to things like what would be a living wage for a family for like a 1-bedroom unit, we saw that these wages were still considerably lower compared to other central office positions within the school district for school food, or other kind of comparable wages in like the fast food industry in particular. So I think I don't want to be misquoted about the Hungry for Good Jobs report specifically, but I think even when factoring in those benefits, we see that there is still disparities in terms of the real wages that are earned related to that. But that's a great question. Thank you so much, Kim.
That's a great question. So I don't see anything else. Well, I do see one more in the chat. But I think for the sake of time, you could respond to that in the chat, certainly, Reese. And then we put Reese's email in the chat as well. So he's offered that you can reach out to him with additional questions as well. May even be able to discuss them in the breakouts that we'll be going into next. So I don't want to eat into our networking time today. So as you reflect on what Reese has shared with us, think about a couple prompts that can kind of guide your discussions. What data is most needed to drive positive change within school food occupations? So that really gets at this question of what should we look at when we are doing research, and what type of data is most helpful to inform that? Or how can your work, projects, and role in the school food system impact positive change within school food occupations? So now we're going to transition into 2 grantee spotlights, which we're very excited about, focusing on kind of the real world side of things and how we can be innovative in introducing students to the world of the school food system. Our first spotlight is from the state of Wisconsin. So I'm going to pass it over to Zaki, one of our state leads, to introduce our first grantee.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited about this project. And in fact, just by chance, we had an event in Milwaukee yesterday, and the whole cadre of folks that are involved in this in the Madison area were all there. So got to see them in person, which is always nice. And they'll tell you more about it. And also, we're just thinking about the next round of grants that is coming out, and the fact that we feel like this is a project that could be duplicated in other states. And so if you're from, Illinois or Indiana or Michigan, listen closely and think about how you could connect with your tech college and do kind of the work that they're doing here. So without further ado, Allison and Maggie, take it away.
I'll add one more in there, Dahi and Beth Heller. So Beth, I think
Beth's here too. Okay, cool.
Beth's here too, yeah. I'm gonna
Yeah.
turn it over to Beth to kick us off. Is that all right, Beth? Oh, I think you're muted.
I am. And thank you, Allison. Thanks, Dahi. So I'm Beth Heller. I'm with an organization called Wello, and I'm so excited to have this quick snapshot for you all of our project, School Food Innovators of Tomorrow. I'm here with Allison Paff-Harris from REAP Food Group in Madison and Maggie Sana from Monona Grove School District. She is their school nutrition director. Next slide, please. So our program, our grant is School Food Innovators of Tomorrow. And the partners that we have on this grant have been working for some time in the area of farm to school, which in our region of Brown County has really morphed into school food transformation as we've done more focus on gardens and local procurement and, really kind of enriching school food. This innovation has come to the forefront. And we saw when this grant application came out that we're talking about school food innovation, but in Allison's work and my work, we had been seeing these conflicting forces. We've been hearing feedback from the food service directors that we were working with. And the charge was this, that we're moving into this movement of school food transformation at a time where we're generating this demand for skilled workers, more scratch cooking, more culturally responsive recipes, all of those things at a time where in our area and in other areas around Wisconsin, it's been really hard to find labor for these school food jobs. So as we thought to address this, we're like, okay, we want to do something that would be scalable, right? Because this is everywhere in Wisconsin. The minute we started talking about it, everybody's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's a problem we have here. So we wanted something that would be easily scalable. And we also wanted to maybe just look around and scan our environments and see like what existing resource is in our community that we can activate and kind of shift resources towards to drive system change, to engage maybe different partners in helping us tackle this problem. So that really was the bonus. We wanted to look to a source of people who were skilled at cooking, who might be coming from different cultural backgrounds, and who might have some desire to get involved in scratch cooking. So next slide, please. So we actually came up with the idea of reaching out to our local technical colleges who had culinary programs and offering paid internships to their culinary students in school kitchens around our region. So we have a group up here in Green Bay, Brown County, and we call us the North Group, and then we have our South Group in the Madison area. So we thought, because we wanted to go for something scalable out of the gate, we're like, well, it'd be really cool if we could just try it in two different environments and just see if it's something that can kind of go with local context, with local demands, et cetera. We set out to expand the culinary capacity of our school kitchens by bringing in these paid interns, first kind of getting them up to speed on what a school kitchen is like, but then offering them opportunities to showcase their skills around demonstration cooking, those sorts of recipe testing, recipe building. We also included a 2-week stint for them on local farms so that they could get exposure to local procurement, because that's part of the grant objectives, as we all know. And the goal was to, harkening back to what Reese was talking about, kind of get beyond that stereotype of a lunch lady and start to showcase careers in school nutrition and current to the students that are currently in culinary training. So this was really awesome. We are going to have some best practices and some things to think about and pitfalls to avoid, but just to share 2 quick highlights for the project. We've really been able to activate our interns. We have a total of 3 of them active right now to do showcase cooking in both regions. So they've been able to develop recipes and taste test recipes with kids, and in case of Monona Grove with families. So really amazing, kind of fulfilling just kind of organically fulfilling some of the objectives of the grant. And we've both seen that now school kitchens and careers in culinary are regularly being mentioned in our tech colleges. And in fact, we actually had a culinary instructor, instructor that was running their own culinary program at a separate tech college, reach out and say, how can we get involved in this program? So that's just a little frame of the project that we're working on. We're in year 2, and Allison and Maggie now have some great suggestions on project management.
Great. Thank you so much, Beth. I'll jump in here and want to share some ideas from, we say project management, but kind of thinking that I'm kind of the grant manager. I'm the grant manager down here in the southern region and collaborate with Beth, who's the grant manager in the northern region. And we want to share, we're talking with the culinary programs, the school nutrition programs, the local growers and farmers, and some of those challenges we've seen, and then some of those best practices. So those are the perspectives I'm going to be sharing here today. On the screen, you see a great picture of Beth with our intern Rodney, who is in the northern region. And some things we just want to share with you all is culinary students vary in experience. Currently, we have 3 culinary interns enrolled in the program, and we're recruiting, and we've got already interest expressed from other interns. But they do vary in experience. Some come in. Our intern in the southern region is coming in. This is a second career, so going back to culinary school after having different career paths in social work, whereas one of our interns in the northern region has had a culinary career, and is now officially going back into culinary school to be able to teach and to grow into different career opportunities. But we also know that a lot of our students in culinary school may be fresh out of high school, so everyone's coming in at a different level of experience. So be flexible. I think we're going to share that on the next slide as to knowing that you may get an intern who comes in and is able to just work independently right off the bat, and you may have an intern who maybe needs a little bit more support and assistance in both just knowing how to work within the work within the typical job hours, as well as how to implement their culinary skills. Second point on the screen here I want to mention is it's really important to talk about insurance coverage and background checks, and they should be started as soon as possible with any of the districts that you're working with. Each district is a little bit different, but one of the things that we have been working through, and actually I think we can go to the next slide because I think I have some things that we've learned as best practices. But what we have found is it's similar in both regions how we're handling insurance and background checks, but there were a lot of kind of like bumps in the road into figuring that out. I'd say in general, what we're doing is we're relying on each of the school districts that we're working with and asking them, how do they bring in volunteers into the district? Because all the districts have processes for onboarding parents and community members who want to work in the district. And so we're having our interns go through that volunteer process, which typically includes a background check. What we've also found is, and this is bullet point number, the second from the bottom, is that it is an easier process for the 2 nonprofit organizations, so that's REAP in the southern region and WELLO in the northern region, to hire these interns as limited term employees and to be able to extend our insurance coverage that way. There were some hiccups back and forth when we were trying to utilize the insurance coverage from the culinary, the tech programs, and it just was going back, well, are they carrying enough credits? Can they do this part-time? Can we bring newly graduated students in who maybe don't have the insurance coverage from the tech college? So we have found to be a good practice is hiring them as LTEs. But starting at the top of the slides here, just want to reiterate that local context is essential and every kitchen is different, as is every intern. So knowing that, want to chat with what your school nutrition programs need, as well as where your interns are at in their culinary experience is important, and seeing how we can match those individuals up. Flexibility is key. Already mentioned this, but interns come with a wide range of skills and experience, not just the culinary experience, but as I mentioned before, kind of life and work experiences. We have found that it's important to work with districts and create tools so each doesn't have to start from scratch. Now, some of our districts may utilize those tools throughout the whole internship process, and some say, hey, I want that support, but I may pick and choose what I'm gonna utilize. And we are A-okay with that. And what we're saying is this grant is a great learning experience to see how this all plays out in different regions. And our plan is to, of course, write this up and to be able to share this out after the grant so that people can understand how to replicate this and grow this. Already chatted about hiring the interns as LTEs. And the last point, I think I've actually already touched on as well. So jumped around a little bit on my slides, but we have found the best practice to be following each district's plan for onboarding volunteers. But now I want to turn things over to our wonderful school nutrition director in Monona Grove School District, which is in the southern region. Maggie has graciously worked with us on this grant and supported culinary intern David in this process. So Maggie, I'll turn things over to you.
Thanks, Allison. As Allison was saying, I was lucky enough to be one of the beneficiaries of this project, which has been really cool to work on with them. You can see our intern David on the screen here when he was working on his farm experience at Rooted, a local nonprofit in Madison. So we have hit some challenges, I would say, with the project. And one of them is that this opportunity arose out of the fact that people in schools are consistently short-staffed and spread too thin. So, of course, in the beginning of the internship, it was like, hi, I would love to spend time with you, but we have to hop in the car and go to several schools because we've had several call-ins and we have a lot to cover today to make sure that everyone gets fed first, and then we could come back and dedicate our attention to this internship. I would say another potential challenge that has worked itself out pretty well is scheduling, just because school food service is usually the opposite schedule of restaurants or the majority of the pathways that a lot of culinary students are looking at. So we have no nights, weekends, holidays, which is I think for a lot of us a real perk, but it can somewhat overlap with class schedule or what they were expecting. One thing that we've seen in our kitchens is that staff buy-in can be a little bit of a challenge. Bringing in people who are getting this professional training and really jazzed about their experience can kind of make some staff feel insecure. So we're trying to balance, like we're here to lift everybody up together and not bring in other people to push out our existing staff. Our time with this project is going really, really quickly. I can't believe we're in year 2 already. So that can make effectively measuring the impact really challenging because it's like, I feel like we just get into a groove and the semester is over already. So it's hard to measure what we've accomplished. I will say that we definitely have made future school nutrition leaders out of this project. And so from that, we've definitely made a huge impact. And we can head to the next slide now, because a lot of the best practices that we've come up with are things that we did not do the first time around. So, so one thing that we learned was that we need it to establish clear onboarding and mentorship structures. We had kind of envisioned this project to be with younger students who did not have much experience and were newer to the professional world, and that's not who we got. So we had to pivot as we went because he had a ton of experience and could actually dive right into a lot of projects. We also know how important it is to integrate the interns into real high value kitchen work, make sure that they're seeing what's actually happening, and also working with our staff to see what skill level they're currently at so that they can help kind of identify where we can make improvements. One thing we have done is figured out that we need to have continuous check-ins, have different pathways to get feedback throughout, because the semester does go really, really quickly and we don't want to get to the end and have, the feedback of, whoops, I didn't get what I wanted out of this. And I think that what we've learned from David is that focusing on the student and community engagement has been one of his kind of what brings all of the work that we do together. So it is really it's really beneficial to make sure that the interns get a lot of face time with students and feel part of our community. One last thing that David has volunteered to do, which we very, very much appreciate, is network within Madison College, because up until this project, there was no mention of school nutrition in that program. And so he's had this great experience and goes back and tells his classmates and his teachers about it. And now it's become more of a discussion topic. And also he's getting, you know, a new level 1 intern excited about the process for next semester. So it has been a really great project, and I feel very lucky to have been involved. Pass it back to Allison or Beth.
Thank you guys for that wonderful overview of your project. We don't have a lot of time for questions, of course, but I want to remind everybody that we will, in the follow-up email, we'll have the state lead contact information, so you can filter questions through them that you might have. And of course, if you're in a breakout session with any of these wonderful presenters, you can ask your questions there as well. So thank you guys so much. We'll go ahead and move into our second grantee spotlight, which is from Indiana. And so I'm going to pass it quickly to Veronica to introduce our next grantee.
Thank you, Jenna. So I would like to introduce Laura Arrigo, Executive Director of Madison Youth Unlimited, the nonprofit partner on the Growing Minds project with Madison Consolidated Schools. This project is a fantastic student-led initiative aimed at building a local food system through a student-run farm stop and other programs that benefit schools, students, and local farmers. Laura, take it away.
Thank you, Veronica. Hi, everybody. As Veronica said, my name is Laura Arrigo, and I'm with Madison Youth Unlimited and our flagship food systems program, the Madison Community Grocery Project. Kind of a word salad. We're working on a new name. I've really enjoyed listening to presentations from all the other grant projects, and I've learned so much from all of you, including just like a minute ago. That was really interesting. So it's nice to share our project with you now and hopefully give a little something back. Our project is based in Jefferson County, which is in Southeast Indiana, and a lot of counties in our region don't have the capacity to supply our schools with local food in a meaningful way. So for our project to work, we really had to think in terms of building the infrastructure of our local food system so that farm to school could even happen. And that meant our project was going to have to touch on a lot of different areas, from making it less risky for farmers to invest in scaling up, to educating future farmers, to making it easier for school kitchen staff to prepare whole, fresh food product. And most relevant to today's training, educating future school food systems professionals who would have the skills to prepare and procure fresh local food. And go next slide. Oh, actually, I'm one ahead. Sorry, you can head back. I didn't look down. So we created a project that touched on all of these things with a student-run farm stop at its center. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on that first bullet point in the project description because there is a lot to that first bullet point. So for those of you who aren't familiar with farm stops, the experience of shopping there is just like going into a small grocery store with a single cash register, except all the food on the shelves is locally grown or produced. It's like my idea of heaven. In this case, our farm stop is owned and operated by our local school district, and it's run by high school student leaders. So it's a student-run business in partnership with farmers. The farm stop was intended to achieve three major goals. One, creating a consistent daily market opportunity for small farmers who could then scale up to meet demand slowly, season by season, until they're ready to serve the schools in a meaningful capacity. Two, to create an outlet for the schools to purchase local food at a reduced price at their own pace, giving them time to expand their capacity to work with fresh local products. And three, to generate a new generation of farmers, school food systems professionals, school cooks, ag business leaders who are educated to understand the value of connecting local farms with schools. So students are involved in every aspect of managing the farm stop. They build partnerships with farmers, they manage the inventory, they manage the funds, and our 12 culinary students are using local produce to prepare salsas and soups to sell at the farm stop and the schools as they build an understanding of what it takes to produce fresh food at scale. So we're aware that no farm stop is an island. So we've created supportive programming around the farm stop that focuses on wider food systems work. And that's where we hit the other 2 bullet points here. We don't expect students to magically enjoy and understand the value of local food when they show up in high school. So we get them started early. We host family cooking classes and taste tests that engage elementary families in creating and choosing school meals that use fresh food. We're also installing teaching gardens at each elementary school and working with Purdue Extension to deliver an in-school curriculum to every 3rd grader in the district every year. So that's over 200 students per year receiving a basic nutrition education and a full set of gardening skills to get them started on their journey to running the farm stop, joining FFA, or joining the culinary program. The idea is to connect kids with local food from an early age and then stick with them into their teen years as they deepen those interests and skills so that they'll be ready to join our school food services staff or to grow for it or to understand the business side of procuring food for the schools. And we're also networking and consulting with counties all around Southeast Indiana to build a regional, mutually supportive school food system. So to help with that, we're laying groundwork for a food hub that can hopefully do some of the prep for school kitchens and make fresh food easier to cook. We're hoping that our high school culinary program can participate in that because their salsa and soup project is a perfect pilot for something larger. Over on the left side of the screen, I've just highlighted a few ways these programs prepare our future school food systems professionals. So we want them to practice building relationships with farmers as they serve their community, so they can understand the seasonality and nuances of working with local farms because it's different from buying from GFS or Piazza. We want them to experience growing food for each other and having a voice in choosing healthy school meals for their elementary school. And then we want them to experience actively serving their community as teenagers, as they put their culinary and farming and business skills to work to meet a real community need. And we want them to see themselves as part of a larger whole in our regional food system because it can be so easy to feel alone in this work when budgets are tight and kids are picky. We want our future school food systems professionals to know that they have support and that they shouldn't be afraid to use it and even build networks of support for themselves. So now I'm ready for the next slide. So stepping back and looking at how we got to this point, I think the thing that has made this project work so far is that we take a holistic view of our school food system. There's no detaching it from the larger local food system or from the unique way that each community functions. There's no detaching it from the logistical and emotional hurdles our farmers face when it comes to scaling up their farms. Also, we know we can't keep the doors of the farm stop open if we aren't equipping our families to prepare and enjoy fresh local food. We know we can't provide local food in our schools if our kitchen staff aren't equipped to prepare it or our children aren't primed to choose it from the lunch line. So our model has been to just touch on all of these areas. But because our reach is so broad, we have to make sure we only operate within our capacity. So the first step of determining our food systems needs and our capacity to meet them for us is always listening. So in the years leading up to this project, we conducted expansive community surveys and focus groups and listening sessions. And even now, almost every program we do is part education, part listening session so that we can continue to go around this circle and grow. So from listening, we did little pilot programs based on what we learned, maybe a small cooking class or a little garden. And during those pilot programs, we listened to the needs of the participants and then took the next baby steps forward. So maybe we talked with our farmers about their capacity to meet the needs we learned about. And we started doing little manageable things for our farmers, like buying local food for our cooking classes. Then we built new educational programs based on the knowledge gaps that our community shared with us during the pilots. And then we reached out beyond our community to collaborate and share and learn what others were doing. And then we went around the circle again. I think the reason that our students are so passionate about the Farm Stop and the culinary program is that they know it's serving a direct community need based in listening, and they understand the value of their work for their community, which is a rare opportunity for teenagers in school. We hope that this passion and sense of purpose will carry over into their careers in our school food system. We've been around this circle several times now and have been slowly growing our capacity the whole time, to the point where a soft opening of a student-run local food store felt like a pilot program that we could handle. But it started with a couple small cooking classes and a few raised beds, all based on what our community told us it needed, with a few $1,000s and a handful of volunteers. We didn't start where we are. I see we're already on the challenges slide. Listening and moving with our community is a messy process, and it takes time. So our biggest challenge has been waiting. We're pretty good at researching and learning what our community needs, and we are often mentally ready to move forward on projects long before the funding or the infrastructure or the institutional buy-in is there. There have been plenty of times when we've had all the pieces in place ready to move forward, but have been waiting on, say, a school board procedure, or waiting simply to feel like we had a critical mass of our community on board with an idea. But that's kind of the nature of working within the messiness of community. So, I mean, especially if you want to build buy-in and bring as many disparate people and organizations along as possible, that takes time. But we've also learned that if we persist with listening and experimenting and asking the right questions, eventually time ripens. The funding appears, or the institution hires the right person, or the right farmer talks to his peers, and suddenly all systems are go. And then we move forward. And then at some point there's more waiting and the cycle starts again. So what we've learned is to put the pieces in place as much as we can while we wait, so we can be ready to go as soon as the momentum is there, whether that's on a tiny pilot project or a larger project. But we've also learned not to just wait on that momentum, but in the meantime, to keep asking questions, keep having coffee with people, keep refining the vision as we learn from our community. Because eventually, if we listen carefully enough, what we end up saying is exactly what our community wants and needs to hear, and that's where the magic happens. Even if at first that magic is just a few raised beds. That's magic for a community. So that's as quick of an overview as I can manage. But if anyone has questions later or during a breakout session, please get in touch and I'll be happy to talk more. Thank you all.
Thank you, Laura. Gosh, what wonderful presentations from both of these groups. Just the wheels start turning, I'm sure, for all of you. So we will let that take us right into our second networking session. And so just some additional prompts, very similar to the first, just thinking about how these presentations connect to your project. And we do have a few school meal operators with us today. So I would just love for them to share what specific staffing challenges you've experienced in your kitchens, or if you have any solutions to share, because I think that would be great for the group to hear as well. So now that we're at the end of our training, I'd just like to review our objectives. So of course, we hope you were able to really take what Reese shared with us about best practices and staffing support, and then connect that to some real world situations of how we can be innovative and introduce students into the school food workforce as well. So as we move forward, we really want to encourage you to at least pull up the evaluation right now so that you can remember to do it as soon as we finish. These evaluations are very important for our project and gives us feedback so that we can continue to improve and make sure that we're meeting the needs of you all. So please, please take a few minutes to do that evaluation. You can pull it up with the QR code or the link that's in the chat. And we also have it on that resource page as well. So it's easy to reference there as well. And of course, we'll send it out in a follow-up email. So lots of opportunities to grab that eval. Reach out to our any of our state leads if you have further questions for any of the presenters. And of course, Reese's email was shared earlier if you had any questions for him as well. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate your time today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.